I just wanted to talk about the theme of the retreat and just a few things about Sesshin, because I don't normally get a chance to talk about Sesshin, so I thought this would be a good time. I've forgotten the exact title of the retreat, but I think it's called Our Lifelong Lawsuit Against Reality. Is that right?
Unwinnable lawsuit.
Our lifelong unwinnable lawsuit against reality. Good title, eh? And I've chosen that title in honour of Ken. Can't be with us this time. And it's his favourite, I think it's his favourite phrase, although he did tell me that it wasn't his creation, so I'll just make that clear so Ken doesn't feel embarrassed. So just my understanding of the essence of what this means is that, and you may have already felt it, you know, 'cause we sat this morning, we sat last night, that when we sit in Zazen, or in ordinary daily life, you know, we feel this at different levels of intensity, but often a sense of anxiety or a deep-seated sense of unease or lack. And as I say, this can be, you know, it can be very light or it can be intense, and it can, in your own life, it can move around from those on that spectrum. But I think all of us feel, it seems to be part of the human condition, that we feel this sense of lack. And the Buddha traced this, I mean, this all comes back to the original teaching, and he traced this angst to the three signs of being, which traditionally the three signs of being are insubstantiality or lack of a self or no self, impermanence, and dukkha, which, you know, we've talked about dukkha before. It doesn't really work to just call it suffering. It's more a sense of a lack of ease or of satisfaction. And the Buddha's realization was that this unease or suffering arises out of our finally an inevitable, unsuccessful attempt to deny impermanence and the insubstantiality of the self and of all phenomena, and even ourselves, even our own insubstantiality and impermanence, which is the hardest one to bear, our own, that it will end in our own death, which is a really hard thing to take on board. It seems completely unrealistic to think that we will die when you're alive anyway. And this is what's called a lifelong and unwinnable lawsuit against reality. And what it really boils down to is that, for me anyway, is that in a very simple way, is that our expectations are not met by the actuality of our lives very often. That's what it kind of boils down to, you know. On a very simple level, somebody gives us too much milk in our tea or no milk at all, or it's too strong, or the weather's not as good as we'd like it to be. Anyway, so this all brings me back to what Sesshin is about. And if you're anything like me, I mean, I used to always arrive at Sesshin with an expectation of how it should be, or how the teacher should be, or how the other students should be, or how I should be, and very often it wasn't like that, you know, it didn't align, and and it can happen here. So there's always a gap between expectations and what we find, and it's this gap that leads to suffering. So what I really encourage you to do on this session, if only not to criticise me, is to drop your expectations. Completely drop your expectations of how it should be, what it should be. And I mean, I really appreciate the effort everybody makes to be here, by the way. I mean, I do recognise, you know, you have to go, you have time from home, from family, you spend money getting here, you spend money to be here, and also it's a real commitment, and it's a personal choice to impose a voluntary restriction on yourselves, which kind of a wonderful outcome, but which also at the beginning is a lot to ask. So we take our minds away from what we're expecting on sesshin, and we do our very best to plant them in what is happening now. And if you can't practice that now, having made all that effort to be here, when are you going to do it? That's the thing. You can't keep postponing it. You're putting it. So if you really do want to practice, I'd really encourage you to use this session as an opportunity for that. So when stuff comes up, irritations, doubts, just don't ignore them, but be present to them, and be aware, and initially anyway keep some distance from them, because what Zen does, and I wanted to say a quick word about Zen as well. Zen allows space for these particular conditions to arise. So we almost arbitrarily choose to put ourselves into a situation where we allow what would you call it? Stuff, emotions, feelings, all those things, to come up, and the space itself, and also the context in which we sit, and also possibly the discomfort of sitting, will trigger emotional responses, memories, tensions, sometimes for some of us unsolved. They will come up, and so this is a great opportunity to work with them without any judgment. So that's the most important thing for me, is that whatever comes up, allow it to come up without judgment. And I've written down here, and I've highlighted this in pink highlighter. Practice is ultimately about embracing each moment and opening to it without judgment, which we all know is really hard. But yeah, that's the plan. And the vehicle we use for this, the principal vehicle is Zen. So we sit upright. We keep a good posture. We don't overdo it. Allow it to be natural. And we allow things to be, whatever comes up. Even your own, I think I wrote in one of the websites, even allow your own delusions to be. Even if you recognise they're delusory, you can allow them to be. And thinking is okay, but don't be attached to what comes up. So people often ask me about, Dogen talked about thinking about not thinking. It seems like a contradiction. How do you think about not thinking? It's another thought, isn't it? But my understanding of what Dogen meant by that, and forgive me Dogen if you're still around, if I misunderstood you, but thinking about not thinking is not allowing your thought. It's really hard to say, because anything you say is kind of has an opposite view, so you don't want to be in a space where there's any duality. So if thoughts come up, thinking about not thinking means to allow thoughts to come up without making a choice about them being good or bad. So thoughts will come up, that's what happens, that's the function of the mind. But ideally, we don't polarize, we don't sit in a place of duality and that's good, that's bad. one of the great values of the practice and of doing Zazen and allowing things to be is that when memories or ideas or what we view as being the cause of suffering or our own discomfort, we can, if we allow them to come up, we can integrate them into our lives, so that we're not like pushing them away. They become part of our whole and complete life, because they will for all of us, as long as we don't continue our unwinnable lawsuit. Suffering will arise, and we will have to deal with it, for every one of us. So Zazen allows us the space to integrate that into our lives. And then finally, I just wanted to say about Zazen is for the first few days, my hope is that with focused sitting, and I was really pleased this morning, Andy mentioned it to me, but I also felt it as well, that we got off to a good start today. It felt like a really strong sitting this morning to me. I don't know whether it was just me, but it felt powerful, So first day or two, then we can calm our minds. Minds calm down. They get a bit bored with themselves, and we get bored with our own story. And slowly it starts to kind of quieten out a bit. But the intention of Zazen isn't to achieve calmness, although it's one of the benefits of it. It's only when we can really calm down, when we're not attached to what's happening in our brains, that we can start to be more aware of our own process and the way it works and the way it functions, and we can bring a more clear view, or rather we can see what lies beneath the surface of the mental agitation. William Blake called it cleansing the windows of perception. Cleansing the windows of perception. I think Huxley cleansed his with LSD, didn't he? Mescaline was it, yeah. So I've got written in very bold type, I'll read it to you. The heart of the Zen tradition is Zazen. It is the practice of being what we are, of allowing, permitting, opening ourselves to ourselves. And our aspiration is to open the path to transformation, to becoming comfortable in who we are. So we enter wholeheartedly into embracing our lives and cultivating the courage to live freely. Can we cultivate the courage to live freely? Because it seems to me that's finally what it's all about. Yeah, I guess it's finally about. Do you think that's finally what inner freedom? No, finally the practice is about inner freedom. I haven't got my rack shoes tonight, but I had tension right on the back. No hindrance in the mind, therefore no fear. That was always my great wish. No hindrance in the mind, therefore no fear. And then the final thing in Zazen is you have to breathe to live, of course. So don't try and stop your breath when you breathe. In Zazen, my ideal is that there is no awareness, self-consciousness, no effort whatsoever focused on your breath. So you just allow yourself to breathe. Just as when you're walking down the street, you don't think, how am I going to breathe? You just breathe, don't you? It's the same as Zazen. So for me, I don't encourage any. You will breathe. Your body won't allow you not to, so you don't have to worry about it. You will breathe. I don't think there's anything else that I wanted to say, particularly about Sesshin or the theme of it. And I will talk more tomorrow, and Tony will on Wednesday. There's 3 questions that I really like for myself, and I ask people in Liverpool every now and again because they change. But there are 3 questions that you might hold in the back of your brain during session. and they are: what are you looking for in life? What makes you feel most alive? And what gives your life meaning? So, what are you looking for in life? What makes you feel most alive? What gives your life meaning? And finally, what are the inner and outer barriers that obstruct you from those things? They're worth thinking about. You might discover that you don't even need to do Zazen. You might discover you don't even need to do practice when you discover what you're looking for in life. It may not be this. You might save yourself a lot of trouble. Okay, I'm done on a kind of brief introduction, but I'm very willing to answer any questions or hear any of your experiences or comments.
Sensei, would you just say something about form in relation to, particularly in relation to Sesshin, because there's a lot of it.
Yeah, thanks John, thank you for that, yeah. Well, there's two things. One is that the form has a very practical function, and it allows us all to practice in the same way and together. So, there is an anarchy in the Zendo. And it also acts as something to kick against. It's almost set up on purpose to wind you up. So it provides something for the ego self to think, I don't like this, I don't want to do this. What's the point of that? This is stupid. When that comes up for you, there's no need to act on it. Just kind of have a little look at it and think, why? What's going on here? Why am I thinking that? Why am I feeling that? And then the other thing is about form. Particularly when we chant the sutras and we do the service, is that if we do these things, it's the same in lots of traditions, I think, not even necessarily religious traditions, but if we follow the ritual and the form on a really regular basis, what happens is that finally it becomes, it gets into our bones, it becomes part of our inner makeup, so that when the kind of sacredness that we bring to service, for example, and the kindness that we offer to one another when we bow, and the respect that we give one another, and we give the tradition and the people who have gone before us, when the lineage, all these things, if we do them on a regular basis, they start to become part of who we are. So there is a kind of raison d'etre behind all this. It's not just mechanical. And I would like you to. I know it's hard because I get into automatic myself as well. When you're doing service and you're chanting the same thing, you kind of just you forget about it. You're not consciously present. You're just chanting. It's much better for you and for all of us if you can be really conscious about what you're saying, be present in there. Be around, be aware of what's going on, so that you understand the connection between all the things that are happening, and try and make some connection with what's actually said in the sutras, because the Heart Sutra and the Identity of the Relative Absolutes, they say in précis form, but absolutely they describe the essentials of this practice. Really they do, they're fantastic. Yeah, it's a bit like anybody that's done martial arts, and there's a few people here who are really highly qualified, will tell you that what you repeat the same move over and over and over again in its ideal, in its best form. You repeat the same move in the most efficient way that you would deliver it if you were going to deliver it to somebody, to some other human being. So that if there is a time when you're under stress and it's difficult, maybe somebody's confronting you, you don't have to think about the way you're going to move. It just happens. and you move in the right way, you move in the best way, you move in the way that's most effective. And it's the same with practice. You know, the more we practice, the more hopefully that we start to act in a way which is in accordance with our real nature. It's the same thing, really. And in that respect, what happens, I know for most, this both happens in Sesshin and in our lives, is that we keep, you know, we get the pot boiling, we get, you know, the zazen pots going, and you know, the water's starting to boil, and then we pour a jug of cold water in. You know, we go and we get distracted, we dilute it all, we, you know, get involved in some intense conversation with ourselves or with someone else. And that can happen on Sesshin, but it also happens in the context of practice as a whole. You know, people will practice intensely, and then they'll give it a break for a few years, and then they'll start again. And in the morning, so we didn't. In the evening, sorry, when we say time swiftly passes by and opportunity is lost, that's absolutely true. You know, every session you do may be the last one you'll do. Really, I mean, anything can happen, and it does happen for all of us. Like, we can get, you know, we have an accident, we can be ill, things can happen in our private lives. So, really value this opportunity to do session, because it isn't always available. At the same time, I wish you well in your life. I don't want you feeling ill or falling over or getting run over or hit by a brick off a roof. I'd really like to see you for many years, but just bear in mind that, you know, that things change. Things do pass by. Okay. Thank you, John, for getting me going again.